chapter 28, page Memdalad, 44. This is the 7th Discourse in Hamshech Ayin Beis, volume 1. And the Rebbe Rashab is winding down here. This is the last chapter in a long analysis of sefirot Agnuzis. That was around 10 chapters long. That started in chapter 18. So I'm just putting things into context because this is such a mountain that you want to break it into pieces, so to speak. So the truth is, the whole theme right now is a discussion of dissecting the anatomy of existence. So if like someone were to say, how do you define existence? It's an interesting question. So if you asked a scientist would say, well, there's observable reality, which we experience with the 5 senses, what we see with our eyes, our ears, taste, touch, and smell. But we all know that that's just the surface, like the tip of the iceberg. This is even without a scientist. A regular person knows, let's say a child. You see children, right, when they take something, they break it apart, they want to know what it looks, what it makes. That's what we human beings, we're curious. We want to know what makes things work. So you take it apart and you realize there's a machinery behind it. So let's say a clock. It tells time. But you open up a clock, you see, it's today digital, but let's say a clock, the way the original ones, with springs and wheels, and they turn, and there's a whole coordination. It's an engineering. So everything has an inner engineering. Everyone understands that. The question is, how deep does it go? How much can you break it down? So you break it the next level. So science has already discovered that there are forces at work. And forces already are visible. Wheels and gears and springs are observable. But they're forces. Besides the fact, let's be honest, a wheel itself is also a force. What is a wheel? A wheel is a round thing, so it turns, so it can carry something. Wheel, they say, the wheel is probably the greatest invention of all. The wheel, when humans discovered the wheel. Because it created the ability of motion and movement and travel and so on. But you keep on going deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole, as they say. So next thing today, a scientist would say, beyond the physical, everything is made up of elements. Once upon they used to say, Eish Ruach Mayim Ofer. 4 elements: fire, wind, fire, water, and earth. Earth, wind, and fire, as they put it. But today we know there are elements. There are many more elements. There's hydrogen, there's oxygen. Elements are made out of molecules. Molecules are made out of atoms. Atoms are made out of subatomic particles. Today, subatomic particles are made out of subatomic particles. It's as far as they've gone. But it's obvious that there's more. How far we'll go, we may never know. This is purely physical. When I say subatomic particles, no one's ever seen them, but it's still physical reality, meaning it's observable through extrapolation, through its impact. But how does the Rebbe Rashab dissect existence? Really, based on Kabbalah, is that everything is Eris and Kalim. Existence is defined by Eris and Kalim, an energy within a container. Nothing in existence does not have an energy, and nothing does not have a container. Container is its identity, and energy is its muhus. What is it? What gives it its personality? What force is there within it? So even a stone. What science calls molecules and subatomic thing, we would all call that energy, plus, of course, spiritual energy. That's where it goes further. Science will stop with saying that it's energy. But someone will say, what gives the atom power, the subatomic particle, power to make an atom that will turn into, combining atoms will turn into certain molecular structures, which in turn will turn into what we see as wood, or water, or other phenomena. So they don't have an answer to that. Science says we can't go there. That's metaphysics. We can go physics. Metaphysics is already, the classic Chalam story, where the guy comes out of the shtetl, he never saw, every vehicle was always a horse. A horse pulled the wagon. He comes back to town and they say to him, he says, I saw something, a miracle. They say, I saw a wagon and there was no horse pulling it and it was moving. They say, how was it moving? He says, there was a weather wagon behind it pushing it. And what about the second wagon? So he says the third wagon was pushing that. And what, after all the wagons, he says, who pushed the last one? He says, I forgot to ask that. That's a technicality. It's like saying, like they used to say, the earth is on top of the back of a turtle, and the turtle stands on an elephant. The elephant's on top of a tiger, and the tiger's on another elephant. And who's the bottom? We forgot to ask. So the question of yesh ma'ayin is not like, good, let's say a ball of gas turned into force and turned into galaxies and then turned into solar systems and an earth and a sun. But the gas, the one little piece of gas, where'd that come from? So Chassidus, of course, goes a step further, that just like there's so-called physical energy, there's spiritual energy. And just like an architect or an artist invests his energy, and if you see a piece of art, you don't just say it has made out of atoms and made out of subatomic particles. You say there was an artist who put it there and conceived of it. So we go a step further. Beneath the subatomic particles lies spiritual energy. I say beneath, I mean within. Within. But how do you define that? The structure is Eris and Kalim. And this is going to be like maybe close to 70, 80 pages, all about dissecting Eris and Kalim. But the Rebbe Rashab does it. He goes to the source. Eris and Kalim are there in the root. And Atzilus is the quintessential reality. If you want to say, what does a world look like the way God wanted it to be? Exactly, that would be the world of Atzilus. It's the perfect world. It's a world, but it's perfect. It's exactly aligned. You want to know, what does love look like? So if you go before Atzilus, you don't have a structure yet. Akudim, the Kalim have not yet developed. You could say it's like a child being developed, but it's not a mature structure. Tell you has its imbalances. You go lifnei tzimtzum, as we've learned, it's all in the mind and the vision of the artist. It's not a piece of art yet. There's nothing to look at. Atzilus, you go to Asiya, Gashmis, Chumris, we know what it looks like. We don't need anyone to tell us. If you want to know what it looks like in God's mind, what would the world look like in a perfect setting, it would be Atzilus. There, Chesed, perfect balance, enough love, there's a scholarless interconnectivity with Gvura. So if you want to, let's say, align yourself with where am I in my life? How do I love? How do I experience Gvura, awe, fear, or whatever the word you use, compassion? My chochma, bin adas, you'd want to align yourself and say, okay, what is it in Atzilus, and where do I stand? It's like, think of it like having a perfect circle, right? And then you made a circle, you take your circle and put it on the perfect circle, and you can see where there's inadequacies. Essentially, that's when we say that the Hirotzen Shem, Yemaisi Kemaisi Dei Avesai. Halavai was the lashon there, that a person should be always, forgot the beginning of the Maimon Chazal. Masay Yagiyu, your person should always, Masay Yagiyu, Maisi Kemaisi Dei Avesai. We know you can't be like Avram Yitzchak Yankov. There are different neshamas, different levels, and so on. Yet we learn about them and we teach about them because they're the model, what we call the archetype. If you want to have a model of chesed on earth, it's Avram Avinu. So that's why it says in Sefer Rabbi that when Avram Avinu came into the world, it said chesed. That Atzilus said, you don't need me anymore. You have chesed in a body. It's called Avram Avinu. Every character, every personality in the Torah is a quintessential, is an archetype. And the whole picture of Eris and Kalim as we know it is actually the characters in the Torah. The personalities in the Torah and the events is the map. But they also manifest in real life, in real time, which is meaning, they actually lived. This is what they lived like. But they are embodiment. Moshe Rabbeinu, Torah, chochma. Each one, David HaMelech, Malchus. I mean, obviously this is more complicated because some of them have different levels. I'm giving a general example. But Avram, Yitzchak Yaakov is Chesed, Gvura, Teferes. And everything about them captures that. Pachad Yitzchak, etc., etc. So with that being said, Atzilus is the structure. And that's the whole discussion here. Just a small overview. In order to understand this, why does he want to understand the structure, the Rebbe Rashab? Because he wants to understand how the structure connects beyond structure. That's where the whole Hemshech begins, Keser. Keser is the rotzen of the artist, that he wants to have this art. He wants to have this world. That's the connection, how Atzmus, who's completely separate of anything, doesn't need anything, chose and desire existence. However you want to put it. So to understand how we connected Keser, structure to beyond structure to the source, How we get back, you need to understand the structure. Because remember, if the structure is not understood, you're not just jumping into Kesed to connect it beyond the structure. You have to know how the structure gets there. That's why it's so vital. So essentially, you could say Eris and Kalim are not just the way God created existence. Everything has an energy in a container. It's also how the container gets back to the energy that will get back to the source. Because the container is the identity. The energy is transcendent. The energy, reflects the divine, the source. Keli reflects the source's interest in having an existence. Existence connects to the transcendent that's within existence. That's Pnimi. That will slowly allow it to connect to Makif beyond itself, which ultimately allows it to connect to the source itself. That, you could say, in a nutshell, is the picture. But it's much more complicated when you get to the details, and obviously much more complicated when you try to implement it. It's all nice on paper. So we've been discussing at length this whole Eris and Kalim, which he's going to go back to. But to understand it, he went now to the root of Eris and Kalim in Lifnei tzimtzum. What does it look like in the vision of the creator, in the composer or the artist? So here we have he established that there's Sher Sheh Eris and there's Sher Sheh Kalim. Whatever happens in Atzilus has to happen in so-called the mind of God. But there it's only in the vision of God. That's Lifnei tzimtzum. So there's nothing but God's vision at that point. You could say Hayu Shmoi B'Vad. You could say Erein Sof Lifnei tzimtzum is God's vision. But a vision is a vision. A vision is completely bottled and completely one with the one that has the vision. There's nothing to talk to. There's nothing, even a human being's vision.
So Atzilus is something more tangible than just a vision.
Absolutely. Atzilus is the vision in manifest. There's something there. What the something is that there is an identity, there is a reality. The question is how to define that. It's a good question, but it's not. The truth is, and when you speak Bapratis, you could say that Atzilus is the vision compared to Asiya. But it's compared to the source itself. That's another discussion which I would like to have, but not right now, because that really comes down to, because remember, the interesting thing is that Ein Sof Lifnei tzimtzum is Atzilus the Klolos. So in a way, whatever you say about Atzilus after the tzimtzum, there's a me'ein zeh of Atzilus before the tzimtzum. I would say the way I would describe it is like this: physical reality, we know what that is. Atzilus is necessary. Atzilus outside of after the tzimtzum, because you have no way back. If you jump from Asiya straight to Lifnei tzimtzum, you're going straight into the vision of the. First, you have to see. In other words, first you have to see the vision in the painting before you can get to the vision inside the artist that made the painting. If you know what I'm saying. So you have the painting. You have the vision within the painting. He said this last chapter, basically, last two chapters. I'll review that in a moment. And then you have, but what is the artist like? Hashem, God wants us not just to have a relationship with Elokim, Hateva, how He manifests in nature. That already is God's fine. If you could have a relationship with God exactly the Keyech Eliki, Keyech Apel Benifel, the energy within all of existence, it'd be a pretty good world. But He wants us to have a relationship even with how He is higher than Sefirot, Sheva Klam. And He wants to have a relationship with Him Himself, Hashem Echad, who? That's why the Alter Rebbe said, Nish Gan Eden, Nish Te'elamabich Vil Dir Alei, Dichalei. So, the bottom line is that He wants a relationship with the artist itself, not just with the painting He created. Because there are Mekubalim, there are Kabbalists that explain, you know what, our relationship ultimately is with a manifestation of the divine, but not with the Etzem. This is with the Samach Vavi brings about Keser. Those that say Keser is Ein Sof. Why? Because we can't have a relationship with Atzmos. It's beyond our existence. No person can see God and live, as Moshe was told. But Chassidus doesn't go with that. Chassidus says, no, the Achdus is all the way. Obviously, we need Torah mitzvahs. Look, in Perek Lamed Vav and Tanya makes it very clear that if the Gilui Elokus was revealed, the divine was revealed, no person could contain it. So God gave us Torah. Ein Eis Ala Torah. Torah gives us the Kalim, the power, to be able to contain Elokus. Anyway, the bottom line is like this. So Atzilus, I would say, is the vision within the painting, which contains with it elements of the vision beyond. That's why this whole discussion here, whether Atzilus is Gilui Helam or Yesh Ma'ayin. If it's Yesh Ma'ayin is the element of creation that we have an identity. That's like a new thing, an independent reality. But Atzilus has and the Eris of Atzilus, that's the Kalim of Atzilus. The Eris of Atzilus have transcendence. They have a similarity with the divine, with the source. Yet, That's what he's saying. There's two levels in this air. There's the Shersha Eretz Lifnei Tzimtzum. That's Sefirot Sagnuzis, the hidden spheres. They are essentially the Eir HaGvul. He makes it clear he's not going to the opinion that it's only that 10 hidden spheres are not just the root of the Kalim, they're the root of the energy. And that itself has also a root. This is what he discussed in the last few chapters. So he gave two examples of from the hidden spheres within the vision of the source becomes actual spheres within Atzilus, within the vision of the painting, let's put it that way, of the structure. So two examples. One was a letter from a word, Baruch. So the letter only gives you one letter of an entire word. You don't have the word, but it's the same letter. Beis of Baruch that you teach a child contains within it. It's very diminished, but the person who sees the word understands the full meaning of it. The second example he gave was the details of a concept. So the teacher has the whole picture. The student is only getting one detail at a time. Even in those details lies the entire picture, but you see it only in a very diminished way. The teacher sees the whole picture. Even when the student gets all the details and finishes, let's say, learning Ayin Beis, it's not the way the Rebbe Rashab would learn Ayin Beis, because he has it in a much more abstract, more refined state. So this example was that this example is the Sefirot Sagnuzis, the hidden spheres is the whole concept. All the spheres with the entire kavanah, the purpose why God wants spheres, why He wants Atzilus. When the spheres actually come out, you only get one piece of it. You could already tell in that piece some of the bigger picture. When you get all the spheres in Atzilus, you could tell the whole picture. But it's still not the same way as it is in the vision of the source. So basically, it would be the equivalent of what we said before about the unconscious state of the artist. How does he relate to his conscious vision of the piece of art that he's creating right now? That would be the equivalent of Lifnei Tzimtzum and Atzilus.
Conscious vision would be Atzilus?
Yeah. The conscious vision of a particular image. 10 spheres, not spheres enkets. But the same artist could have made a million different type of pictures and images. We talk about a God. It could have been its infinite amount of combinations. So the last chapter is where he brought the moshel and the nimshel goes like this: that the Eir Ha'el al Kolona, that was the Chiddush and Shari Yechid Vamuna. That when you put together the letters into a word, not only do you have the meaning of the word, you also have another additional higher intelligence. The intelligence of combining it, particularly in this formulation, in this configuration. Like he said, you could say Odain, you could also say Melach al Kol Haaretz. Why do you say Odain Kol Haaretz? So he said, like Tosfos, Rosh and Ran, they all can say the same idea in different words. So there's an additional intelligence that's beyond the sum of the parts of the art. So when you look at a piece of art, now we'll talk about how Asiya looks at Atzilus, the best you're going to figure out, initially, we're talking about the initial stages, is the vision of the artist within the painting. But what about what the artist is like beyond the painting, beyond these 10 spheres? So the 10 hidden spheres know that too. Because they're all inside the mind, that's the artist is at work there, not the structure. So they know that too, that's what he said. That Eir HaGvul, the shadish of the 10 spheres, in the hidden spheres, is an extension of, and a part of, the Eir HaBli Gvul. And he gives the example with the tzitzis. It's min konov, but not the konov atzmei. Meaning, tzitzis has to be a separate piece, but it's attached, and it's the same material as the material from which the beged is, from the talis itself. Talis is makif. It's a beautiful example. Talis is Bli Gvul, which is the source of Seviv Kalalman. The tzitzis is the Lamed Beis Chutim, knots, is the 32 paths of chochma, the Sivus chochma, pnimi. The pnimi comes from the makif. It comes from the same material, but it's not the same piece. It's not the same thing. Kalim, on the other hand, as he said, is not even that. Kalim are just pure letters themselves. They don't have any energy in them. So letters, if you dissect basically a word, there's a letter. The letters add up together to a word. That's the vision of the 10 spheres. And then there's another energy, the intelligence of combining these letters. And that is the Eira al Kulana. And Esser Sefirah Sagnuzas, the hidden spheres have all that. And that's why you need two tzimtzumim. One tzimtzum, this is last chapter, I'm reviewing chapter 27. One tzimtzum is to hide and conceal and completely conceal, like he says, siluk, it's a complete removal of the Eir HaBligvul. In other words, the artist, all his possibilities are beyond the 10 spheres. There should be sefirah saying ketz, unlimited spheres, that has to be concealed. Because that's revealed, you're never going to get into a structure of 10. That's one tzimtzum. So that's completely good. Eir HaBligvul is concealed from the Eir HaGvul. And then the Eir HaGvul has to go through a tzimtzum, that it shouldn't be how they're all combined together in a word, where they're all together, and what radiates is the power of the word, the synergy of the word. So you need a second tzimtzum that the letter Beis should emerge, that the sefirah of chochma should emerge. The interesting thing is, this does go back to the first mashal, not the second mashal, because the whole thing with synergy of letters and combining into words is the first example.
In that mashal that you give, the word comes before the letter, yeah? That's what you practice?
No, the letter comes... Well, everything comes first from the source, you mean from the teacher?
Because you said the second tzimtzum is basically...
Second tzimtzum is that the letter should come out of the word. Yeah.
That means the word came...
Yeah. Well, you're going a mile lamata. Yeah, from the top down. Yeah, from the top down, everything starts... Yeah, that's how it works.
So the word...
Lifnei tzimtzum, all the words are intact. Everything, the whole picture is there. The tzimtzum creates that you only see a beis, a reish, a vav, a chov. That's how he explains it.
The sea of letters.
Exactly. A sea of letters and a sea of words and a sea of ideas that are even more than the words. It's like two stages. One, think exactly like this, like an artist. Before he makes a painting, he can make 1,000 paintings. He can make 1,000,000 paintings. It's three the same ketz. The artist being God here, it doesn't have 10 spheres, it could be, he says clearly, it's the same ketz. But then there's the level of aleis harotzen, as he calls it. He wills and desires 10 spheres now. Shir atzmei b'keach. He envisions 10 spheres. This he calls the level of malchus of Ein Sof. It's the level of atik of Adam Kadmin. It's the level of milchinas achreina of Ein Sof. All these. This last chapter, he gave all the names for it. It's malchus. It's the last of the Esser Sefirah Zagnuzis. And he explains why it's called achreina. How could you call the last? There's no levels there. Before the tzimtzum, there's no top and bottom. So he says last as being the final stage in the artist, in the vision, before he actually going to manifest. Then comes the tzimtzum, and the tzimtzum has two functions, as I said. One, it conceals the bligvul, the unlimited powers. Look, let's put it this way. If the divine bligvul would, let's for argument's sake say only the second tzimtzum took place. We were able to get a beis out of the baruch. But the bligvul is radiating big time. The problem would be existence would not have lo yush beisu. There would not be the parameters of existence as we know it would constantly be open to change, because bligvul is radiating somewhere, because it could always be a different way. Why do we say when we say the Ebershter says koshik kriyas yamsuf? It was difficult for him to part the sea. The sea and land is equal to him. He created both of them. He created all the rules, and yet when he parted the sea, he did it with a whole seder, with a wind. Kavyochel b'derech hateva, b'slapshus in derech. Why? Because the parameters of existence need to be very defined and defined, and you know that Shabbos always comes in this time, and he's in a gate, and it's a gate also talach. I'm not just talking about the structure of existence is airtight. It's lo yush beisu, does not change. So if the blig gvul was radiating inside the gvul, if ne'at tzimtzum, in a way, right now the gvul would never, the structure of 10 spheres would never really be able to be solid. It would always be so-called be haunted by the fact that it could always be a different way. It would be like an artist who made a painting, but he's always changing his mind because it could have been a different painting.
But base could stay a base in such a situation?
And I just said hypothetically. Yeah, base could become a gimel. Yeah, exactly. It could become something. I'm giving an hypo.
I don't understand if the second tzimtzum could kavyochel be without the first tzimtzum.
I'm just giving a theoretical. No, of course it can't really be. Yeah, but you could have the first tzimtzum without the second one. But the second can't really be without the first. You're absolutely right. I'm just giving like an example. What would be if the first tzimtzum didn't exist? It wouldn't. You're right. It wouldn't be because it couldn't really have a base. It would be. Yeah, but hypothetically, it would be if you had the first tzimtzum and not the second. what you have is the 10 hidden spheres. So you have a vision of an artist, but you have what radiates is the power of the word or the power of the idea, and you can't teach a child. A child needs to know Beis. You can't begin by teaching a child first bracha. First I need to know Beis, Reish, Vav, Chav. Then I can come to bracha.
And the artist wanted the child.
Yeah. The artist wants the child, and he wants us to grow. That we should be able to do it on our terms, and contain it and integrate it. It has to be integrated. Everything is er pnimi. He wants er pnimi. That's the kavanah. If it's er makif, again you lose the whole. It can remain living at tzimtzum too. I mean, yeah. Look, the challenge, what you said is what you brought up is an extremely important point. I was thinking about it. Now, ultimately, to explain the difference between Atzilus Pratis and Atzilus Klolis. But I think Atzilus Klolis Pratis is definitely the vision within a real painting. There's definitely an existence. Once there's a tzimtzum, there's existence. The Atzilus before is completely in the mind of God.
Is being described as Elokus.
Because the beauty of it is that it's like a hologram. It's like Elam Katan Zeh Adam. Everything is everything. The same thing that works so-called after the tzimtzum, Bedakus works within the mind. In other words, it's not like within the mind of God everything jumps quickly and then what comes out of it, then it's a structure. The structure begins lifnei. Everything after the tzimtzum exists Bedakus lifnei tzimtzum. Not in a physical way, but that's what allows us to connect to Atzmus. Because if it didn't exist before the tzimtzum, if let's say you have the whole, there was nothing before the tzimtzum, only a tzimtzum, and then you could only reach to the tzimtzum, and you couldn't go further. We have nothing to identify with. Shmei or aladargas in Shmei. Remember, Shmei is just another name for Eir b'derech. It's really Eir. Why do you need Eir in Sof? In Samach Vav, he answers 3 questions in Anechi Samach Zayin. Why do you need Eir in Sof? Why couldn't Atzmus just create existence? He gives 3 reasons, and one of them is this, what I just said. Eir is everything is interfaces, remember. Ayin Beis, all interfaces. It's all interface between one level and the next. The ultimate interface between us and Elokus itself, the way it's in the Etzem, is lifnei tzimtzum. There's no way around that. That's why there's 10 hidden spheres. You could say God just created spheres outside of after the tzimtzum, and that's it.
Why can't you just say he had a vision in his mind for a certain image art, and then he drew that art? That's the siyah. That's the Elam Hazeh Gashmi. So all those levels in between are not really there.
So how we, the student, can ever retrace the steps? How do you get back?
You're not saying why
you can't get back.
But in the mashal, the art is the siyah, right? Or you're saying
No, the art is the vision of the art is Atzilus. Bria is the
picture that you see, that you perceive. That's the tzimtzum.
You know what? I wasn't going to say it here, but let me say. Every creation, human creation, needs 4 steps. And it's fascinating because those are the 4 worlds. You always begin with a vision. I'm talking about a normal project. You have a vision, you have an idea. The vision, then you create an outline. That's called chemer without surah. That's bria. You create an outline, even on paper. You write, general headlines before you break it down. Or you see when they build a construction, you build a skeleton, a foundation, a skeleton. Then comes, you see the tzura. You start giving it shape and form, so you flesh out the outline. And then comes asiyah, is the final product. So if you if you want to really connect to the source, you have to connect to all 4 levels. But you really can't connect to the top one without going through the bottom ones. Actually, Pshat to them is the Rush Sod of Torah is traveling through the 4 worlds. When you learn Pshat in Chumash, you're learning Asiyah. This is what happened. You're learning Drush Rem, there's 2 opinions, which one's B'riya, which one's Yitzira, but whatever. You're learning the deeper, what's the metaphor for it. When you're learning at Seid, you're learning that Tzil is the vision of it. It applies beautifully. So that's what we just mentioned, tzitzis. Hilchas tzitzis, you learn, you have an atalis, a beged, you need tzitzis, what they're made out of, the chutim, how you make it. That's pshat. It's hilchas tzitzis. You go to Medrash and Gemara, you learn the reasons behind it, Laman Tiskuru, the different Ramazim and Sefirah Chinuch and other places. You learn Chassidus. Chassidus says tzitzis is pnimi. this beged is makif. The makif and pnimi have to come together. That itself is the kavanah. So there you go, learning tzitzis in 4 worlds. You're learning the ultimate. You're learning the vision. Why did God make a tzitzis? Good, everything is a gzeira gezarti, but there's a reason. It reflects the structure. So it's like what we spoke about, ideas. Remember with the Ragachover, you can strip ideas from their thing, and then it becomes a concept. And then you start saying, you know what, tzitzis and talis reminds me of something in Sukkot. Sukkah is a makif, and the dal minim is a pnimi. You start finding parallels. My point that I'm trying to make is that God wants our relationship with the source, not just with what He created. And the way He structured it is such that it could be. This is the way you do it. This is how it's created, and this is how we retrace the steps. Even the idea of istakel baraisa or bara alma, kach barnash is what's the lashon? Also baraisa b'kayim alma. That's the lashon. The fact that He put it into a blueprint means He put into a way that we can retrace it, we can understand it, and we can reconnect and do what He wants us to do. And the connection goes all the way. Once you reach Atzilus, now the connection is how you're going to connect to the vision of the Eibishter Himself. So the truth is that whole kamachlekas with the Mekubalim and the Bali Nigla, what he brings in Sheirish Mitzvah Satfila, that Ani Mispal Daze Hatinak, with the Rivash. They say all the Mekubalim, they're mechaven in the different tefillas, they're mechaven to Shem Keil and Shem Elikim and Shem Adnai and Shem Havaya and Alamaisis. Ani Mispal Daze Hatinak, I don't need all these Shems. The answer is we need the Shems, not because the Shems are Shems, they're Garazim Biyad HaChesed, they're just instruments of the artist. But you jump straight, so yes, we also mispal straight to the source. But if you want a relationship that's integrated and premium, there's only one way to do it. Your chesed, to connect to the Eibishter's chesed, you can't just jump. You need to connect to a particular. So the shame is just the name of the Eibishter. It's how you relate to God in a particular fashion. That when you bench Him for the food you ate. And when you may eat an apple, you say Beida Priyetz. And when you eat bread, it's Lechem Min Haaretz. And when you drink water, why not just make one big bracha? God gave me all this because He wants it in, as I said, pnimi. The kavanas that should be within the structure should recognize the essence. So you need 2 things going on. You need something that speaks to the structure, that's defined by the structure. That's the sefirot. And you need something that speaks and tells you it's not just a structure. There's a unifying force behind it all. Now, it's important to remember that there's one thing He hinted to, which I think is unbelievable. You could always ask the question, why did God make the world this way and not another way? The fact that He created a world that works up His seichel, the way we understand seichel, you have to say that itself has atzmizdika power. Because it's not random. There's a reason that He did it this way. Not that there's a reason. God, I should qualify that, because there's no reason. But it means in some way, this world, for some reason, like He said before, that the kavanas ha'maitzil in Atzilus is we know for sure that there should be er pnimi. Because that's how He created the existence. He created it with intelligence. He created us for us to be intelligence. So you have to say that the kavanah, that things are integrated, like dira b'tachtenim, is not a small matter. It's mushris, all the way in the etzem, the existence as we know it. And this is going to be the hardest thing to ever understand. Why does an existence that's structured like ours reflect the etzem, when the etzem is so beyond any structure? Now the real answer is that He's beyond structure, but He's also beyond structure. So there's no question like that. To say that He should have created no structure, why is no structure more defined, like the Avedis HaKedesh says, Kashem sheyesh lekeche b'bilti bagvul, kach yesh lekeche b'gvul. So either way, you have a situation where we're never going to have an answer to that. The only thing we can say is like what says Chassidus. We know what He wants. Why He wants it, we don't know. We know that He wants it to do b'tachtenim. Why? We'll never know, because why doesn't exist. Why is part of God created. But the why too, the answer, seichel is also part of what He created. So the bottom line is that it's a combination of seichel and kabbalah seichel. It's a combination of understanding the structure and also going beyond it. That's what later he's going to say, that Maseviv Kalam and Bli Gvul teaches us bittul, that we don't get it. Gvul teaches us that we do get it. So tell me, do we get it or don't we get it? The answer is both. We get that we don't get it, and even when we don't get it, we also get it. How do you like that? And there's nothing wrong with that. Who says that paradox is a problem? You know, I was just reading Richard Feynman, the Havel, in physics, quantum mechanics. He says quantum mechanics, the more you learn it, I can tell you, nobody understands quantum mechanics. And he's one of the greatest physicists. And he developed theories. But I find it fascinating because the ones that really develop the best theory are the ones that say, I don't get it. So how do you do both? So that's what Jews are about. This paradox is not a problem for us, right? We get it and we don't get it at the same time. There's nothing wrong with saying that. I understand it. Because you see, insecure people, or people who are arrogant, think that if I don't get it completely, something's missing. There's nothing wrong with them saying, I can get it, and I don't get it completely, so what? If you're secure with that, and that's part of the connection, and that's it. You have to say God is also that way, by the way. You say, Reishad L'Yisyada, right? That an Atik, Reishad said that he himself doesn't know. What does that mean? Because it's beyond knowledge. So actually, when you want to really connect with Atzmas, Atayva and Shtak in Kasha, that there's no question, is when you really don't get it, you're really connecting most to the essence itself. So next time you feel like you don't get something, say, you know what, at least I'm like God in this situation. He doesn't also get, he doesn't know why he had this taiva, because there's no why there. It's higher than why, it's not beneath why, it's higher than the why. Okay, so that's chapter 27, let's go to 28. Let's learn inside. As many overviews as you do, it's always useful, I guess. Because, I'm also speaking. No, that's speaking to myself too. There's one thing that, by the way, that I didn't get clear in last chapter, which I'm still struggling with, which maybe you can weigh in on or look into it. In the beginning, the first half of the chapter, he makes it very clear that the Eid HaMamal is kolol in Eid HaSeviv. It's encompassed, but it's not rooted in Eid HaSeviv. He says that very clear. He says, like 2/3 of the way down, he says, that's what it says in Samach Vav. So he clearly says there's two ways to interpret Mamala and Seviv. One is that it comes from it, and one that it is encompassed in it. And later in the Perek, maybe that's the answer, he makes it clear that the Eid and Sefer Bligvul, let's use the example of the artist, that the artist's infinite capacity decided at some point to envision 10 spheres. That means Eid HaBligvul envisioned Eid HaGvul, which means clearly that the Eid HaGvul is a part of the Eid HaBligvul, which is like the first interpretation. But he says, Lefi HaMavur Khan, it's not exactly like that, it's only kolol. So I can't say it's a contradiction, it's like it's suggesting that the Eid HaGvul is rooted really in a place that's even higher than the Eid HaBligvul, like, in Atzmus, there's both powers. Or, no, that the Eid HaBligvul is the one that actually defines itself into Eid HaGvul, which each one has a mile over the other. If you say that the Eid HaGvul is, so to speak, has its own route, and only traveling through the Eid HaBligvul, remember, either way, they're all mixed in one in the vision. Then the Eid HaGvul has more substance. If you say the Eid HaGvul is part of the Eid HaBligvul, you have to say there's more power to the Bligvul in the transcendence. So both, it's almost like the two opinions whether Eid is Mitziyarim or Pshutim, whether they have shape or they're formless. At the end of the day, we say they're both. But I'm just pointing it out because later in the Perek he definitely says clearly. If you look here, he says a lashon like this. No, a little earlier.
Just a few lines up, he gave somewhere just before that, the paragraph he talking about the Moshe of Tanya.
1 second. Oh, here we go. The show Inyan Hiskalus, Pchinas Memalkam Shabein. So something has a Pchinas Yisach. The Inyan Hiskalus Hazeis. Here we go. The Inyan Hiskalus Hazeis. Who Mashaedin Sof Ablikvul Shir Bats Me Hamshach Shab Pchinas Gvul. See that line? It's like 10 lines from the top on page 44. I think he may be being metavach, maybe he's reconciling between the two, because he says hiskalus hazes, meaning how they're all one in the vision of the artist, of the source. The hiskalus is what is the meaning of that is that the bligvul energy, shir ba'atzmei, imagined or envisioned amshacha, a vision of gvul. In other words, the bligvul power of the artist capacity envisions a gvul thing. Which it needs more ear. Let's put it this way.
So it's like your first interpretation.
Yeah, it looks a little more like the first, but he calls it the scholars. I'm just pointing it out. It's something with yesh la'ayin bezeh. It may, also there's a lot of things at the end that he said to look. It's the only place I saw. He says look later, and misham yuvan kan. Look 3 lines from the bottom of the. So we have to really look there to understand it properly. I'll look at it later. Okay, fine. So chapter Chav Ches, 28, bottom of page 44. So we talked 2 tzimtzumim, okay? One tzimtzum is the bligvul, is concealed. And the second is that the er hagvul doesn't have the whole intensity of all 10 as combined in one. You only have one emerging, one at a time, individual spheres. In other words, Esser Spheres Hagnuz is besides having the higher synergy that's more than the synergy of the sum of the parts of the word, also has the synergy of the word, and that also is too much. So it needs that concealment as well. Which of course we're going to come to is that these 2 concealments, one is siluk and one is helam. One is miyut rather. Now, the tzimtzum that was, actually that's pretty cool that the hine, it was the hine, and now, that's really the meaning, for hine. Not behold. Hine, and now, ha-tzimtzum she'bein sof, the tzimtzum, the concealment that was in the infinite light, infinite energy, hu shenisal ma'er she'b'chinas ensof, v'nishadak b'chinas hashara hanal. This is tzimtzum number 1. That the concealment should be, that the infinity of that energy should be concealed, and should only remain the hashara. In other words, let's go back to the artist. The artist, the second before he conceives of a particular piece of art, particular image, so he has infinite amount of possibilities. The first tzimtzum is that those infinite possibilities are put aside, and now we're going to focus hashara. I'm now only imagining this. I mean, say even with ourselves, you ever sometimes concentrate on something and you get distracted, and right away something else, and you say, no, I got to focus now on this. It's focus. Hashara really is focus. A focus on a particular image, which is going to be Esser Spheres.
I always come back to this. What is this? Afisechel, or is this like? Because this is from the Yitzchayim that it just says, Batin and tzimtzum, and he's saying exactly what happened in the tzimtzum.
Look, remember, I told you we only know this because it says it in the sefirot. But there's a seichel to it because another. In other words, if we.
Is this way? This statement is based on the Yitzchayim, or it's based on the seichel part of it?
Both. We talked about both. Kra lamali, svarahi. Svari lamali, krahi. The answer is like this. One second. It clearly says in Chassidus that Adar is a lo yoda me'inyan tzimtzum. Let me just give an example. It means that Ramak lo yoda me'inyan tzimtzum, and the Ramak was one of the greatest mukabalim in history. No question. He's brought in Chassidus. Even after that Izal, the Ramak is still brought. That means But lo yoda me'inyan tzimtzum. What does that mean? That the gili of tzimtzum, even though it's merumez and zayar, and the idea was always there. Those that knew. Moshe Rabbeinu knew there was a tzimtzum, I'm sure. I don't just mean from experience. They knew that this thing. They were mekabel. Say that tzimtzum. It's a kabbalah. Kabbalah, halach l'Moshe Messinai. What did Moshe learn? He also learned. Moshe Chassidai. He must have learned Chassidus. Not necessarily the language, this language, but the ideas. My point that I'm making here is that there's definitely God is revealing to us. It's a yesod in Yiddishkeit that God revealed to us things. If He didn't give us Torah, we wouldn't know. We could no way retrace the steps. Let's, for argument's sake, say Lifnei Matan Torah Avram, as what Chassidus says, they reached Shedesh and Ivraim. They reached the maximum that a seichel can reach on its own. You know the story? Who was it with Yankov Motel? But who is it? The story? The Alter Rebbe Rashab was struggling with Imre Bina. So he sent a message to he was a chaver with the Rebbe Rashab when they were children, when they were bochim. So he sent a message to, I forgot who it was, how does he understand this from this Perek in Imre Bina? You know, we know the Alter Rebbe Rashab says he lost his hair from that. So he's gefallen the Harfen cup. Imre Bina. Yeah, me too, but not from Imre Bina. The truth is, from them came out of the heart. Imre Bina is even beyond, you know, to feel the heart is found, yeah. So he sent a message. He didn't get a response. How does he learn Pshat? Later, one of the Chassidim was traveling. He said, tell him, I'm waiting to hear Pshat from him. So he told the Chassid, et eis kommen an mir. The Rebbe will figure it out without me. So the Rebbe Rashab said, in other words, how do you reach it through human seichel, this Pshat in Imre Bina? Of course I could figure it out on my own, but I want to know how it comes through. Yeah, so it's an interesting answer. That means there's a way to learn it with Seichel Eliki, and there's a way to learn it with Seichel Anushi. If humans were left to their own resources, the fact is, okay, this you could answer different ways, but the fact is they're brilliant spiritualists that never learned a word of Chassidus or Torah and have come to very high levels of understanding things. Avram Avinu, we're talking about before revelation, Mamat Lamaila, reached Madregas. But at the end of the day, you can't really know, number one, for sure, and number two, there's definitely Giluim that only the Eibishter could reveal. For example, Yud Gimel Midas Arachna. No person could ever come to conceive of that. When Moshe, through Chet HaEgel, to Gebet Rachamim, the Eibishter said, I'll be Megala to you, my Yud Gimel Midas Arachna. It's a secret. Baruch Shem Krei Malchus, we also learned. Moshe heard it up there and brought it down. My point that I'm trying to say is that it's a combination. There are things that say, and there are things that are explained. But you know, when you explain it, and a person like a Rebbe explains it, that gufa becomes Torah. So the Alter Rebbe explains B'niyas Chassidus Chabad. It's right clear. It's miyut sofrim episofrim. So clearly it's miyut, and you could find it in Shalah, this Kabbalah. But the structure of Chabad has major chidushim. You know, someone asked me the other day whether you could actually see in Alter Rebbe's Chassidus the derech of the Rebbe of sending shluchim out to reaching Jews from all over the world. Because in Alter Rebbe's time there were no such thing as Jews that were not Shem B'Teira mitzvahs. So I said, absolutely. But if I was in a Rebbe, I don't know if I would derive it from the Shita of Chassidus Chabad. But once you see it, you see clearly. Yiridish and Neshama B'Guf, it's one flow. The Neshama comes down, not to take care of itself, but to take care of the world. We're one, you know, Perek Lamed Beis Tanya is the Yisod Sheb Yised of all shlichus. Of Yisrael Arevim Zeh B'Zeh. My point that I'm trying to say is that it's a combination of what it says and understanding of it. So to say, but remember, it also says that the Eibishter wants us to understand Him, which means that when he said there's a tzimtzum, the tzimtzum helps us understand better Achdus Hashem. Shir Atzmi B'Keich helps us understand Achdus Hashem better. So that's the yesod of why the Rebbe Rashab now, when that is as Megala, these ideas, and then in Zohar, etc., then absolutely Chassidus Chabad comes and explains it, and then you have a beautiful combination of what it says and the Havana of it. The Rebbe spoke about it Barichas. He says the Eibishter could have made tzimtzum kipshute, but the Alter Rebbe was makabel from Rabbi Beis that it was not that way, and then he was malbishir in seichel. The Rebbe said even more. Whole Shaykh of Amun is based on the seichel that yesh mi yesh doesn't need tachbulas ish anish. You don't need to have keich apel benifel all the time. Yesh mayin you do need. It's a chachah gemura. If the world is yesh mayin, it can't exist without a constant, perpetual schachus tmidis, basically. And then the Rebbe said once, I remember, it was the first year I started writing Hanochas. Shabbos Parashat Matis Masi, Tovshin Mem. The Rebbe said, as a Maimar was good in the first Sikha, right in the beginning, he said, was be'etzem ad der Eibishter gekent reinstellen a koyach adir in der Welt, was soll sich ziehen, shitafishnin. Yeah, alle. Now, but then at Gewalt, and he goes into the whole Sheikh of Amunah. So we asked the question. So the Rebbe's made it very clear that the whole Seichel of Sheikh V'Amunah is la'achri shekibul. He says it's true that he received that that's how it is. Now there are apikursim, like he says in Ayin Beis in Sheikh V'Amunah, is not like what is the lashon there? Like yeah, das aminim v'chulu, because they hold that there's no sabbath choleg because they hold it's yesh miyesh. But you could hold yesh that there's no sabbath choleg mitzad kol yochel and the keich ha'atzmus that he could put such a keich in. But then yes, then it would not be quite understandable to us. Hisavus b'chol rega makes it more understandable. So the question is it a Kabbalah or is it explanation? It's a combination. It's a Kabbalah that shows you that the Eibishter wants that it should be understood, because if he did it if he did it the other way, not b'chol rega hisavus, it would be harder to understand. You would have to rely on Kol Yochel more. Let's put it this way. And the whole point of Hasog is that we rely on Kol Yochel only when there's no choice. Not in every step of the way. You don't say, "Oh, that happened. Okay, God can do anything." Then you lose the whole lose the whole way to relate to the Eibishter if He can do anything. That's why you have the Kosher Kikris Yamsuf that of Nisla Magona. You don't just have, as I said before, the whole structure is not compromised. It's you can rely on it. And halachas and Torah are built on relying on the rules of nature. That's not even a question. So even from a Torah point of view, the rules of nature are existent. The proof that Chassidus brings, that's not a chizis enayim. The world is not an illusion because there's an isser to create kishuf. If everything is an illusion, then it's all a chizis, and it's all magic. It's not real kishuf. You're not doing anything. Anyway, the concealment was just to conceal the Ein Sof, and it should only remain the hashara hanal. I called it like the focus, the vision. Hashara means to be meshayir, to imagine, to estimate. To estimate. But estimate, you don't want to say here estimate as in it's only an estimate and it'll be a final bill will come later,
Not to estimate how much.
Yeah, right, exactly. But I'm saying estimate, something you give a person an estimate is like I'm giving you a general picture of what it's going to be like. Here, it's an estimate that's going to actually be exactly 10 spheres, not more. It's not an estimate 10 spheres, and then when the invoice comes, you can find out it's 11. How much were they asked? How much will they ask? God said, "I want to give the commandments." He said, "So Jews asked, how much will it be?" So they said, "Give us 10."
That is actually
Yeah. The Hainu Iskalus Esesphiras Agnosis, which means the Iskalus, the encompassing of the 10 hidden spheres, is Zob B'chinas HaYesod Achnei Sheb'Eid Ein Sof. I'll explain in a minute. Let me just read it till the end. He's summing up the last chapter, by the way, right here. He said all this before. So just a little dense. But if you read the previous chapter, let's remember, there's synonyms here. Malchus Ein Sof, B'chinas Achrei Sheb'Ein Sof, Atik of Adam Kadmon, Esses Sfiras Agnuzis are all the same level. Just keep that in mind. Malchus of Ein Sof means the Malchus of Esses Sfiras Agnuzis, which is the B'chinas Achreina. What means Achreina? It means when the artist, instead of focusing on lack of focus or bligul focus, is focusing on that estimate, that hashara of 10. That's the bottom line. So he says, what is it? That's the hainu. Remember I said before, is it iskalus or does it come from there? That's what he keeps on saying. When we say the Esses Sfiras Agnuzis are kolul in Eira Seviv, lifnei tzimtzum, in the shadish of Eira Seviv, what does kolul mean? It means that there's no 10 there. They're all part of the Sfiras Ein Ketz at that point. That's why you need a tzimtzum. Because if you don't have the tzimtzum, the artist will never have the focus of defining it in 10 levels. It'll all. So even though Be'etzem Atzmus can create 10 whenever he wants, emanate 10, but the way it's kolul in Lifnei tzimtzum, the 10 are completely encompassed, like you said, a sea. It's in a sea of infinite spheres. So you need a tzimtzum to separate between the sea and the 10 in the vision. So that's what he says. The hainu iskalus esses sfiras agnuzis. That means the iskalus. What means the hainu? The iskalus is without the tzimtzum. Without the tzimtzum, there's the iskalus of the hidden spheres in the source. And what is that? That's the level shezeh b'chinas hayesha achreina sheb'eid ein sof. This tzimtzum is going to reveal this, or the Esses Sfiras Agnuzis is the lowest level in Eid Ein Sof, not lowest in space, but lowest in quality. V'hi b'chinas nekuda levad. That's the nekuda, as opposed to a sea.
Sorry, I thought that the Iskalus is explaining what means hashara, right?
But the hashara, the way it is without the tzimtzum, that's his skalus. Skalus Esses Sfiras Agnuzis. His skalus Esses Sfiras Agnuzis lifnei tzimtzum means that the 10 spheres have absolutely they can't manifest because they're completely kolul encompassed in Eir HaBligvul. That's what Iskalus Esesfiras Agnuzis means.
The Ashor is doch the...
Hashara is Esesfiras Agnuzis.
The Ashor is the opposite Nui of...
No. One second. The Eir HaBligvul is Mishayer. It can do anything. It then constricts itself to 10. That's the Hashara. The Hashara is the Esesfiras Agnuzis. No, the Iskalus is before the Hashara. How is the Hashara? Let me reword it. What does the Hashara look like? Lifnei tzimtzum, it's the Iskalus. The Hashara is kol in the Bligvul.
So what was before the Iskalus?
Before the Iskalus? What do you mean? Before the
3 levels that we just learned in a couple of chapters ago.
Well, I'm not clear what the question is. When an artist has an infinite amount of ability to draw all kinds of paintings, then he's Meshayir, Shir Asma B'Keach. He decides, I'm going to go this way. That is the 10 hidden spheres. That's what he chooses. Hashara is the 10 hidden spheres. That's what he's Meshayir. But without a tzimtzum, it's all kolol in the big picture.
Tzimtzum is... Ashor is not Tzimtzum?
Nisharak b'chinas hashara. Look, he says. Nisharak b'chinas. One second. Without the tzimtzum, there'd be the hashara, but it's kolul. And with the tzimtzum, nishad, only the hashara.
Okay, so hashara basically is the teitzoya from tzimtzum.
No, the hashara is the teitzoya of God wanting 10 spheres. And if you want the hashara, only the hashara, you need to have the tzimtzum. That's what it says here. I'm not clear what the problem is. I just said, but nisha rak b'chinas hashara.
No, we said before. But once you have the tzimtzum,
Nisha means something remained.
I understand. Now it's clear. Now we have it.
now it's left over.
Okay, leftover. I understand.
Okay, so
So it means
It's like 2 steps. The artist has all kinds of infinite combinate possibilities. It's very clear. One of those possibilities is a hashara of 10 spheres, but it's still now all within the range of infinite possibilities. The tzimtzum takes away the infinite possibilities and leaves only the hashara. Okay, that's it.
The Hainu.
The Hainu is called Esesviras. What do you think that means?
That's the leftovers of the tzimtzum.
No, the Hainu is called Esesviras is how the Esesviras are still kol in the source.
come back.
That's back. That's before Ashor again.
You could touch it either way. It doesn't really matter. Anyway, you could interpret it either way. You could say Skalos Esesviras Agnuzis means that the Skalos Esesviras Agnuzis is the hashara. But what means the Skalos? Then how would you explain the Skalos? So it means it's still there. It's still within part of the whole reality. Let's read on. It's only one piece. It's only one nakuda because it's only one possibility of many possibilities. Look, in quantum mechanics, this is very obvious. You have to remember, think about it like this. There's infinite possibilities. The infinite possibilities includes the one possibility that is going to become the one, but right now it's all part of the infinite possibilities. Sefirah saying Ketz. Then there's a concealment that allows this one possibility to emerge. Frankly, it's all still in the level of Iskalus, because the second tzimtzum didn't happen yet. So it's still all... based on what he said in the previous chapter, Hainu Iskalus is referring to Iskalus b'chinas malkam shabbos has b'chinas hayesach neshim. He says the inyan Iskalus hazeis u'masha erin sof ablikvul shir ba'atzmei hamshacha sheb'chinas gvul. That's what Iskalus means. He's just repeating. Read the line, as I said, 10 lines from the top. It says clearly. You ask what Iskalus is. There he says the inyan Iskalus hazeis. You see that line?
Yeah.
U'masha erin sof ablikvul shir ba'atzmei hamshacha sheb'chinas gvul. That's what Iskalus means. That's what he's referring to here. It's not tzimtzum, not tzimtzum. It's not yes tzimtzum, no tzimtzum. He's just talking about that state of affairs. Let's continue. And that's Malchus of Ein Sof. Omnom hanakuda rishena shehischil lizgalis lacharat tzimtzum. Omnom, however, the first nakuda, the first spark, the first point that began to be revealed after the tzimtzum, which is the first level of the 10 spheres, which is the level of chochma, and then in parentheses he has tzimtzum habeis liyas chochma b'chinas sefirah pratis b'fnei atzmei. This is the second tzimtzum. That chochma should be a separate sphere. Remember, infinite possibilities now has one possibility. But that one possibility is all the spheres together. It's still a big vision. And now you need tzimtzum habeis, that should be chochma b'fnei atzmei. It should be an individual chochma. That's what he just said here.
So when he talks about b'chinas malchus shevein safe, does it need to be?
No. He makes it clear in the previous chapter there, it's all still all combined. Malchus is combined with chochma and all the spheres. So it's all...
It says malchus, he doesn't say...
No, because it's going to be that. Remember, it's all there, but it's not. Let's put it this way: it has not emerged in a way that's tangible.
And the zweite meaning, tzimtzum,
is that it should emerge as a letter Beis, chochma, one sphere. No, now it's no longer gnuzis. No, after the tzimtzum is not gnuzis. No, after the tzimtzum. No, because you still need kalim to emerge, etc. But it's now a chochma. You now have a distinct chochma. That's what the tzimtzum addition does. It conceals that whole intensity.
Without kalim.
The beginnings, the beginning of kalim. The beginning of kalim begin to emerge then. What happens after the tzimtzum is that the kalim emerge. The esis harashimo, no. But the bottom line is, we're talking now from the Eider's point of view. We're not talking about the tzimtzum that affects the containers. Look, it's still, let's put it this way. Everything we said before the tzimtzum is not even the conception of the child yet. It's still machshava hakduma, so it's still there. But now we have a egg has been fertilized by a seed. Think of it that way. Now you have a distinct thing called chochma. It's not yet a full-blown tree. It's still a seed, but it's already now has a property called chochma. The bottom line is the intensity. Let's call the teacher and the student example. If the teacher does not separate his infinite possibilities into one picture, the Rabbi Rashab wrote Ayin Beis. He could have and did write hundreds of others svarim and mamorim. Then he chose Ayin Beis. Now he writes the whole Ayin Beis. But even that's not enough. So first tzimtzum is not to write 1,000 things, but to write a bligvul, write the one hemshech Ayin Beis. The second tzimtzum is to write it in pages and in words and in chapters that we can digest it step by step. So the second tzimtzum is one step at a time, one sphere at a time. And then we retrace the steps. Now he's saying that there's another tzimtzumim, if you think it gets complicated. The plot thickens. The nekudazu yeshba beis tzimtzumim. Oh, no, I don't know if it's another two. No, I'm sorry. So bottom line is, the infinite possibilities was concealed, and now you have one possibility, which is 10 spheres. That needs to be concealed in order that one sphere should emerge at a time, and it should have individuality in defined existence. If the second tzimtzum didn't happen, he said very clearly, there's a whole chapter just on that, if you remember. Well, let me refer to it. Chapter 22. It starts. If it would extend that way, it would all be one amorphous whole. It would be like, imagine the keiches hanefesh, the faculties of the soul just emerging. Like he says by a simcha. What happens is they emerge without an order, there's no seder shtalshelus, there's no iskalus, there's no structure, there's no organization. It would be like a drunk who's complete, all his keiches are just pouring out. That would be if they didn't have the second tzimtzum. There's no structure. So now he says the nekuda zu, this nekuda, this spark, this point, this one point, which is only one point of, like he said, nekuda levad legabe Eidem Sefer Bligvul. It's only a nekuda. Think of it this way. Eidem Sefer Bligvul is like this whole thing, and one piece of that Eidem Bligvul is one part of the vision, one specific focused vision. She says this nekuda yeshba beis tzimtzumim. This nekuda, this point, has two levels of tzimtzum, two concealments. Tzimtzum aleph, the first concealment, hu she'erein so baruch hu tzimtzum kol ereso v'hitzol rak b'chinas tachtein shaber. The first tzimtzum is that the infinite light concealed all his energies and emanated only from the lowest level of his energy, which means that only this lowest level, meaning Malchus of Ein Sof, of Eses Sefirot Sagnuzis, v'hi b'chinas hashara anal. That's the level of hashara. That's the level of his imagining, his envisioning. Let's read on, because Huh?
This line is very difficult. Tzimtzum or rasa v'hitzil. Sounds like it's separate actions. Actually, we thought we were saying that before the tzimtzum, there was already between top toning. Now it seems to say that it's in a different order.
I'm not clear why you're saying that. My concern is more that why is he saying this? Didn't he say this already?
So a dozen times. He repeats himself a dozen times.
I don't think he's repeating himself. I think he's adding something. But I would not jump until we read the whole thing. So
tzimtzum and then hitzil.
That's exactly right. Of course,
hitzil
is a result of the tzimtzum. You cannot emanate an individual. You cannot emanate without concealing. The concealment of all the eris means all the eris. Sefirot ein ketz. He doesn't say yet. He's not just talking whether it's siluk or miyut. He's going to talk about that. That's the whole beginning of the discussion. But why? Huh? I don't want to jump. I want to see what he says. I mean, I'd rather read it from the Rebbe Rashab than guess. Why guess?
Exactly the same.
I don't know. Let's read on. I'm not going to jump without the reading. In the middle of us, it's like this exactly the example. An artist is giving us a picture. You want to figure out the picture without what? If the Rebbe Rashab took the time to write all this, we can take the time to read it. No?
Bookmark on the question. I don't know if the question
One second. You're not the only one sitting here. We all want to understand this. My point that I'm trying to say, and I'm saying it specifically, you have to have patience. Thank God he wrote it. If for God forbid, it would have been here, right, it says, Chosher Asiyim, we'd have to sit and try to figure it out. We don't need to. It's a Lashon Harav. Not even, I want to read. Let's read it, and let's slowly dissect it. So the tzimtzum aleph is that evidence of tzimtzum. It seems the same thing what he said earlier as being the first tzimtzum. That's what it sounds like. That the bligvul is hidden, so there should be hitzil, and only the lowest level should be emerged, which is, he says, b'chinas hashara hanal. In a way, this tzimtzum is like a tzimtzum before the tzimtzum addition, if you want to think about it like that. We don't know about that. Shezeu ma shekosel kulam b'chochma sisa. He's going back to the language that he used earlier. He says chochma ma'ayin timotze. Actually, no, he didn't use this example. No, I'm sorry. This is what it says: kulam b'chochma sisa. Everything you made with wisdom. But the Chassidus emphasizes, what does this mean? Kulam b'chochma sisa. Ki gam chochma b'chinas asiyah. Etzlei yizbarach. Habilti bal vul v'tachlis. When you say kulam b'chochma sisa, means not just that you made everything with wisdom, but chochma itself is a level of asiyah. How would you read that in the pasuk? Kulam b'chochma asisa.
Kulam, all the levels, all the aspects, b'chochma, including chochma, asisa.
That's how you do it, but it's not definitely not pshat.
No, of course not.
No, but there must be a little more. Kulam b'chochma asisa. Okay, asisa. Also, a chochma is asiyah compared to the God bilti bal gvul v'tachlis that has no definitions and no parameters and no limits. So that's a proof to what he just said. Why? Because it's saying that the chochma pratis, the nekuda, compared to all the eris, is like asiyah. Even compared to the energy and the ray, it's a level of asiyah. I'm trying to figure that out. No, because I know what he's trying to say. He wants to say that there's an ein areich from the even eir hagvul, l'gabe eir hagvul. There's a big ein areich. You see, we discussed how the art. We've been discussing everything the later levels. But if we made the map like this, okay, you have the artist, we have the painting. Good. Let's go back into his mind now. He has a state of being where he has infinite possibilities, and from the infinite becomes one possibility. What happens from that infinite to the one? It sounds like a simple step. It's not. He's essentially trying to say that it's a very big jump, because it's from gvul to bligvul, not real gvul, because it's all within the. Yeah. But I mean to say, yeah. So that's a chochma b'askulam b'chochma asisa. That's what he's talking about here? That the hashara compared. In other words, for the infinite possibilities to be Messiah, one possibility is like the jump from chochma l'kasiyah l'gabe bilti bagvul. That's why he's saying hanugam l'gabe eir v'aziv b'chinas asiyah. In other words, l'gabe the eir, it's not just l'gabe atzmos. Even Lagabe the Eir of Atzmus, it's also Asiya. That's what I think he wants to say. Yeah. Why? Because this chochma that emanated or emerged from the lowest level of Malchus is called Asiya compared to its source. V'hi b'chinas Malchus shebe'ein seif kanal. And this is the level of Malchus of Ein Seif.
This is the source?
No. The source is the source of Malchus of Ein Seif.
The source of chochma is from Malchus, let's say, Ein Seif.
I think I said it wrong. He's not talking about the chochma emanating because that's the second tzimtzum. He's talking now about the tzimtzum of the bligvul in order for there to be sefirot agnuzis. Malchus Ein Seif, essentially. That's what he's talking. He used the pasuk of chochma, but he's not really means chochma that he meant. He's talking here. But listen, in Inyan is the same thing. He's talking instead of Malchus of Ein Seif. So Malchus of Ein Seif, which is the Hashara, is the Bechinas Tachtena. This, compared to its Bligvul Dikasor, so to speak, where there's infinite combinations, is like a Siya Legabe, like that. That's really what he's saying. Yeah, clearly. Yeah, that's how far it is. That's an amazing word because it's like the opposite of what you'd think. No, because I'll tell you why. Because in Ayin Beis, the interface is so dakusdik. He's going to say both sides. Because there's going to be a side that it's a Gilead Helam also. Right now, what he's building the case is that it's Yesh Ma'ayin. He wants to establish because he wants to establish that Eris of Atzilus compared to the Shershe Eris is Gilead Helam, but Shershe Eris compared to the Sheret Bligvul is Yesh Ma'ayin. That's what he's building toward. That's for sure he's building toward, because that's what he said in the beginning of this whole discussion began to say that. So it's a fascinating that jump in the artist's mind from the infinite possibilities to one possibility is a tremendous jump. It's much bigger than we would think.
That's how we can understand this traveling of billion years with the speed of light.
Yeah.
It's still like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is very this is dense stuff. The tzimtzum habeis. Okay, now the tzimtzum habeis. This is. No, this is Ayin Beis. It's nicht as a. I'm telling you, there's no mamorim like this. This is takes you on a trip. The tzimtzum habeis, the second tzimtzum, who shebe'es sefirot agnuzis are called kosher b'chinas hisachdus. Then esses sefirot agnuzis itself, everything is bound there in one unity. V'im kein hari b'chinas chochma hisa klula im shara sefirot. And if so, chochma was encompassed with all the other sefirot. Shahisa be'etzim madregas gavei v'nailis. Even though he says Lashon, but because they were all there fundamentally in a very exalted and a very lofty and heightened state. That means not in any visible, in any tangible, any nikeres, any visible, any recognizable, distinguishable way. It's going back to the mashal. And not only that, not only were they all bound together, like the word baruch in a word, and what dominates is the word baruch and not the letters. But they also have in it the gili, even a higher gili, the synergy, the revelation of an energy that causes them to join together. Like he said earlier from Shayach Vamuna, that when letters come together, you don't only have the erel kolona of the meaning of the word, but you have something else. You have a power, a seichel, a higher intelligence that combines these together. In other words, you have some of the Eir HaBligvul within them. This is what he's saying here. The Eir HaBligvul is combining these spheres together. Remember, let me explain that for a moment, okay? In other words, the artist, we dealt with the tzimtzum, first tzimtzum. Right now, we've already separated through a very serious tzimtzum between Abligvul and Eir HaGvul. So now there's the vision of the artist is focused only on 10 spheres. Only 10 spheres. And that we said is Asiya compared to there. Now, but how these 10 spheres remain, how are they in the artist's vision? There's no way, they're not a painting that we can relate to. If the artist begins to speak, if it's a teacher, you'll never understand what he's saying. Because the flow would be so intense. Even the Gvul. Because all the ideas, it would be like the Rebbe Rashab suddenly saying in one sentence the whole Ayin Beis. No way you can understand it. He has the picture of the whole Ayin Beis in 10 spheres. In addition to that, in it also rests are part of the bli gvul that was already diminished. It's still there from the perspective of the artist. It's concealed because later it's because why did he come up with this focused vision, not a different vision? It also reflects who he is, the etzem of who he is. So in there's also that level. You follow what I'm saying? Even though the first tzimtzum took place, it's still there. Except right now the artist is not communicating; he's focusing on this, but he still has it. Like in other words, if you ask the Rebbe Rashab, what about your vision for Ayin Beis? Does that mean it's not related to all the rest of the vision of your whole picture? Of course it's related. But he's focusing. Remember, it's all in preparation to convey it to the student. This is all in the preparatory stages. We're not even talking about the actuality. We're not even talking about a kav and everything coming in reality. This is all in the mind, as much as we can imagine. I mean, the only way we can relate to this is our own vision. Imagine a vision of something that is still inside of you. You haven't even begun presenting it, but you definitely go through an extensive process. The Rebbe once said by Fabrengen, they asked him, does he prepare before he speaks? So the Rebbe said, absolutely. The halacha, before you say something barabim, you should go 4 times between your b'nei ben atzmei. He told the story of the Rebbe Rashab that when even the saying maftir, he wanted to have a private room, even though he knew he said maftir many times, because when you say something barabim, you have to prepare. And then the Rebbe said, sometimes when I'm speaking, falt rein a geschmacke machshava, a nice geschmacke inyan. So you say it, and even though it's not fully structured, organized, not everything in detail, so it also comes out. And the Ebershter helps. He said that that when you speak in public, you say it the right way. The point I'm making here is that as much as we make the Rebbeim holy and everything, you have to remember the ichad of it. Alter Rebbe said down Tanya, he didn't just put a pen and Shechina Medaberes Meterglein means that the pen just wrote on its own. He should go out of it to know what he's going to write. And the structure of Tanya was thought through as a, so the process of that process, how the teacher prepares before he says it, is tremendous. Now we don't really have that because how much do we really prepare? Most of us improvise. You come and you speak. You don't sit in Menton, the Rebbe Rashab, and hours is b'mizbein I'm Ayin Beis. But he's revealing some of the process, the way it's supposed to work. If everybody, before you did anything, planned this way, we'd be in good shape also, right? Every detail. Well, the thing is, there are surprises. In this, there's no surprises. We can surprise God because we have bechira. That's why it says chayech. We can make God smile, but the structure of existence was well thought through. So I'm just giving you a little peace of mind that God thought through this existence long before it came into being. Okay, so you're saying everything is now at a higher level. It also has in the de'er habli gvul, which is the Gilead that causes them to combine in this way. Like, why did this vision of all visions come from this artist? That also has a wisdom in it. It's also in there. Like an example, like example, the seichel that's melubish manifests in the word. You said this earlier. And that's the revelation of the purpose, the higher purpose in the 10 spheres. The Al-Derech Moshel is which one? Is the Gili Hayashe B'tztarfus, the Kol Sfiris Yachad. 1 second, let me think. He said before that the Moshel of the Ayin Beis only reveals to us. This is interesting. He's shifted here. The end of chapter 25. He said that the Moshel of the Ayin Beis only teaches you the diminishment of this particular sphere. And the Moshel of the details of the Seichel is the diminishment of the general Kavanah of the spheres. Now he's saying it on the Tevas. Okay, interesting. You know why? Because he said that the Teva, every letter has energy, based on the Sha'ar Yichud V'Amunah. The Sha'ar Yichud V'Amunah actually adds that the first Moshel is much more closer to the second Moshel than we thought. Because a letter is not just a base, it has energy. Like he says in Sha'ar Yichud V'Amunah. And then all the letters have more energy. And then they have the third level of energy, which is the synergy. above the synergy.
And then there's another
But this Adarach Moshel that he's saying now, okay, we have it all, by the way, here. It's fine.
Just on
One second, I just want to get this Moshel. Also, come on, Adarach Moshel. What?
How long we still going?
I'm going to finish the chapter.
Okay.
I'd like to finish a chapter each day. But listen, they don't have to feel compelled. What time is it? I'm going to finish the chapter for sure. There's too much mystery here. I got to get to the bottom of this. Yeah, that's why it's going slow. Kamel Derech Moshel. So al Derech Moshel you'd say would be both? Doesn't sound like it. Sounds like the first thing.
It has both ideas.
Hold on. Eir HaSeichel Melubash Ba'ateva is definitely the first synergy. Because the Seichel, like in Baruch, that's not the Seichel of combining the letters. That's a different, 1 second. And that reveals the Kavana El Yena. Okay, that's fine. It reveals the Kavana El Yena. But you could also say it includes the higher part. Okay, it's not so clear to me. It sounds to me more like the first thing, but he says it after the second one. You understand what I'm saying? Because when you look at the 10 hidden spheres, you already understand that God wants the Kavana El Yena, which is that there should be Er Pnimi, and that there should be a relationship with Him. The connection to the Bligvul is more than that. It's not just knowing the Kavana of the 10 spheres. There you're also knowing more what God is like. That is Bligvul. So it's mashma, this example, this parentheses, ostensibly, I'm just asking a question, should l'cheda have been a line before? Before V'ha'i Bagili E'er. Okay. But maybe not. I have to think it through. That's how it's all in the state of the vision, in the Hashara. There everything was all combined in one big picture. Again, we're talking about the picture of 10 spheres, not of all of them, not infinite. And then, when there's an emanation, when he emanated chochma, then there was an emanation of only one specific sphere, not as it's combined with all the others. Okay. Okay. And that's the second tzimtzum. So the tzimtzum Beis, instead of it all being combined in one big picture, like letters in a word, that has that synergy, and the synergy of combining them, instead of that, you have now one thing. Now, fine. Now we move to further. Tzimtzum Aleph u'b'chinas siluk. There we go. Now he's going to distinguish between these two types of tzimtzumim. Even though there's these two tzimtzum, however, there's a clear distinction between them. Tzimtzum Aleph, the first tzimtzum, b'chinas siluk v'yisal masayir. The first one is a siluk. Siluk means removal, or stalkus from the word expiring, or stalkus means to leave. Generally, siluk means total removal. Sometimes Chassidus speaks about tzimtzum additions b'derech siluk, the tzimtzumim later in hishtalshus b'derech miyut. Miyut is a diminishing. Remember, let's not forget before I continue. When we talked earlier with the Eitz Chaim, that tzimtzum addition is unique, that the teacher has to conceal everything, and then comes a ray of light. Not that he conceals and leaves only a kav. Where other tzimtzum, you say derech miyut, means a teacher continues the flow, but he diminishes the flow. So sometimes you have to stop the flow and then begin a completely new step. That's when it's a very infinite distance. And sometimes it's not infinitely distant, it's connection, so you need a diminishing, but think of it like a funnel. A funnel is continues the flow, it just narrows it. Okay. Okay, so tzimtzum, the first tzimtzum, is the form of siluk v'salma sa'er, is in the form of removal, so to speak, and concealment of the energy. Miyut levad. And the second tzimtzum is only a diminishing alone. Now he said all this before, but now the reason for it is obvious. Because the first one, chochma, is asiyah. Malchus Atzilus, Malchus the Ein Sof, is like asiyah. It's completely infinitely distant. The finite vision of one vision of an artist is infinitely different and needs a complete concealment of all the infinite possibilities. Whereas taking from that finite vision and turning it into single, to now take chochma first, like, I'll paint one stroke, then another stroke. Another stroke is a diminishing alone. That's what he said. Well, the Fiza move on, and this is now he's summing up. This I'm telling you, this is the end of 10 chapters right now. That's why it's so dense. He's tying together all the knots of the list of Yud Ches, Perek Yud Ches through Perek Chav Ches. The Fiza move on, according to this, it's understood. It's almost like a new paragraph. According to this, we understand how the kav, which is the finite energy that has Eir HaChochma, Eir HaBin, and so on, is in a level of Gilead Helam. It's only revealing that which was concealed. Which means it's in a form of miyut. It's a form of diminishing, not a form of complete concealment. The Hagam Sham Shachi Al Yidei tzimtzum, even though the kav comes through the tzimtzum, the kav comes after the tzimtzum. The tzimtzum conceals all the energy. Nevertheless, because the tzimtzum, compared to the energy, is not a form of siluk, this has to be qualified. He doesn't mean not siluk compared to the containers. There it's complete siluk. But for the energy, it's not a complete removal. Ki masha sefirot nechalku nischalku li sefirot miyachadas. It's only that the spheres separated for them to be distinguishable spheres. And the chochma, even now in the kav, fundamentally is the chochma of Ein Seif, meaning the chochma of the Esed Sefirot Agnuzes. V'yesh ba ma'er adishin, and it has within it from the initial energy. Now he's going back to the second mashal. Like we understand from the example of the Prati HaSichlim, from the details, the detailed intelligence within a bigger concept. What did he say there? That every detail, every page of Ayin Beis has within it the whole picture. So this is not a siluk. It has within it there, but but from the student's perspective, he only sees that detail.
Basically, the siluk happened before that.
He didn't finish. Once we continue, we'll see. It's only in a form of diminished energy. If so, it's only a form of Gilead Hell. You're revealing that which was concealed. It's true that while it was concealed, it couldn't emerge without a tzimtzum. That's why you need a diminishing. So it's only Gilead Hell. But here we go. But compared to the Eid Seif HaBligvul, the infinite possibilities, which is Eid El Al Kolona, like he said, this is not the synergy of the word. It's the power to combine these letters, which is a higher intelligence. Ha-chochma. Chochma. V'chein kol ha-sefirot. That's good that he adds that. So, in all the spheres, Hi be'ein ha-reich. They are infinitely distant. Shari nikra sheirish shemokar ha-gvul l'gabe madrega zu. Because it's called the root of gvul, compared to this level of bli gvul. Commission is bar li'il perek tezvav. Like we discussed earlier, chapter 15. V'gam sha'tzimtzum yibchin siluk shenisha rak reishim levad. What's he saying here? V'gam sha'tzimtzum yibchin siluk shenisha rak reishim levad. He's going to say in the parentheses what he means. Huh?
Before.
What?
Already a tzimtzum that was only this is on top of that.
Yeah, the first, going back to the first tzimtzum now. That's why. V'gam sha'tzimtzum b'chin siluk shenisha rak reishim levad.
That's a language.
Yeah, I'm going to read. And also the fact that the tzimtzum was in the form of siluk ha'er, meaning the bligvul, the siluk, the tzimtzum, the concealment of the infinite, and it left only a residue, only an impression. That's like a new one here now. Oh boy.
So that's the Ein-Sof? Inspiration?
No.
Yeah, so we can chochma in.
1 second, I'm trying to figure out what he means by reishim levad. The reishim levad, the chlal reishim, we're talking about the tzimtzum arishim leaves that reishim, and that's the kelim. He doesn't mean that reishim. He means the reishim that even. Oh yeah, because he said so. Remember, he said as sefirot agnuzes before the second tzimtzum also have the er naila. They have something left from the er habligvul. Right. It's not. So. Okay, fine. That's the reason that you needed the miyut, diminishing, because it still has something of that. Okay. In other words, the whole Ayin Beis has something from beyond the Ayin Beis. So therefore, okay, fine. Which means that the infinite light, which is the Eir El Kolona, the energy that rises above, that's above the 10 hidden spheres. Even when it was when the energy was removed through a tzimtzum, a impression of them, the impression of it remained in the essence of the in the root of the Shahari Dvar Dover Kedusha Ein Nekrim came in Legamri. Because something in Kedusha cannot be removed. Kedusha Leizazimim came. Something Kedusha cannot be removed completely. That's beautiful. The has the Vart. See, an example I'm giving of the artist.
It's such a chiddush of it, we don't even realize it's mamish a major chiddush. I never heard of this in my life. That the tzimtzum happened before the sefirot. See, the first tzimtzum happened before the sefirot. The siluk. Yeah, that's basically. Look, it's exactly what he's saying here.
Well, it's a little different than that. I'll explain. It's not exactly, because remember, he's dissecting the tzimtzum harishin. That tzimtzum harishin is doing all these things. The one tzimtzum of tzimtzum harishin has a lot of impact. It's not.
Second tzimtzum.
Remember, there's no zman here. There's no zman.
If you go over the chapter again, you'll see that a second tzimtzum happened between the Ashes and Atzilus.
Who says the two tzimtzum are not happening simultaneously?
Okay, fine, simultaneously, but it's a different one is before this.
It's two levels. It's two aspects of the tzimtzum harishin. That's if you go back. If you really go back to the beginning, you'll see that's what he said.
Between the two tzimtzum, that's basically what he's saying.
Okay, so one second, let me finish the parentheses. Because something of holiness can never completely be removed, as it's known. It's only a reishim. It's only an impression. Let me just explain this for a moment. You see, interesting, I was thinking somewhat different before. The artist has infinite possibilities of creating art, right? He then chooses to create one piece of art a certain way. That is informed definitely by the infinite possibilities because it's the same artist. There's some connection there. So I thought that the reishim remains because it's coming from the same person. So even though it's one piece of art, somewhere it reflects his bigger picture, whatever this artist is about. But he's saying here, no, it's mitzad gedusha. It's not mitzad seichel. He's saying mitzad gedusha because of the gedusha sa'inyan. That's why it's not removed. That's why it remains. In other words, in essence, you don't have to. But an artist, you can say that no. Once he's determined focusing on one art, one vision, the other visions are they're all gone now. But it's not really the case. They're not really gone because a real artist will show you, even in his one art, he'll show you a reflection of things that from other pieces of art and other ideas and so on. But I guess the Kedusha adds a necessity. It necessitates it because it's Kedusha. So bottom line is, this in the mashal, that's the synergy that comes from the combining. In other words, there's a wisdom. Why did Hashem want 10 spheres? And why these spheres? So besides the synergy of the spheres together that must be diminished in order for one sphere to emerge, there's another factor here. That within it lies also the Kayach HaMetzaref, the power of the creator, of the source, combining these 10 spheres. So there is a reishim from that bli gvul also there. And that's the Kedusha that remains there. Which is vital because that means we could retrace our steps from the essence sphere saying you could enter into the bli gvul. At the end of the day, even though it's siluk, there's still a little door open because there's something that remains. Remember, he said, it's not like from the kav, the chochma in the kav compared to the chochma in necessary sagnuzis. That's the same. It's Gilead Helam. From the chochma of the necessary sagnuzis to the bli gvul is yashma'ayin, is infinite. But there's a residue. There's still something that remains from the bli gvul in the gvul.
So who is the siluk?
Before necessary sagnuzis.
The siluk is from the infinite possibilities to the one possibility. Nothing changed. What changed? There's no change here. He didn't change any. Everything's exactly consistent.
In my head, they do something exactly.
What you see something? What nothing changed? It's exactly he's explaining what he said before, but it's not contrary. It's very consistent. Before you understood it?
Maybe not.
Okay. Well, there's two tzimtzumim. One is a tzimtzum from bli gvul to the gvul, sheresh era gvul, and one is from the era gvul in order for there to be distinct spheres.
No, I always thought that sefirot is Before.
It is before. It's
Before
the second.
before the siluk. No.
It's before the second
I
tzimtzum.
thought it's before the siluk. Before the first.
It's not according to that.
That's how I understood.
It's before the second. It is a tzimtzum. It's before the tzimtzum.
I don't necessarily agree with what you're saying, just for the record.
I don't understand.
No, I'm not. It's not necessarily what you're saying correct, because you're turning it too mathematical. It's not mathematical. Remember, there's no time involved.
No time. Siluk.
But in Indian.
Yeah, in Indian, the siluk.
Anyway, I would like to continue reading it and see what he says, but I'm almost sure it's not the case, because the Rebbe has a whole maimorim about the tzimtzum lifnei tzimtzum addition, and this is not brought this as that. So I'm almost sure that this tzimtzum is the tzimtzum addition, but it doesn't make a difference. The bottom line is, however you understand it, it's two steps of tzimtzum here. Forget about what you 2 steps of tzimtzum.
Before the first step.
Were you talking mathematics or are you talking Havana? I gave you an example of Havana. God wanted a world. Okay? He wants an existence, but he wants an existence that will experience transcendence and connect to God. So, Ein Sof is Bligvul. Within that, he envisioned Shir Atzmi B'Kayach. So let's talk about it. Shir Atzmi B'Kayach is before the tzimtzum addition or after the tzimtzum addition. The fact that this infinite Eir is Shir Atzmi, specifically 10 spheres. How did you always understand it? You didn't call it a tzimtzum, but it's definitely some type of diminishing. Something happened. But nothing really happened because it's all in the shadish. It's not really happening until the tzimtzum takes place. But you could say within the inness of that tzimtzum is a preparation for that state of being. So that says everywhere. It's not the first place that says Shir Atzmi B'Kayach. Shir Atzmi B'Kayach, everyone knows it's Lifnei tzimtzum. Shir Atzmi B'Kayach doesn't emerge after the tzimtzum. He's Mishayed in Lifnei tzimtzum what he wants later. That's the whole point here. So how does it? Remember, even Sefirot Agnuzis is still envisioning what's going to come later, not what's now. So nothing happened yet. That's my point. He's still envisioning. You're not talking about an Atzilus yet. There's nothing happened yet. He's envisioning what he wants. He wants 10 spheres. If you look at the vision, it's 10 now and not infinite spheres. That is tzimtzum 1. Fine. Tzimtzum 2 is the emergence of individual spheres. And both need to happen for the kav to emerge. Let's put it this way. So there's a kav. The kav is Gilei Helam Legabe compared to the hidden spheres, and Yesh Ma'ayin or Shalei Berach.
Yeah.
That's the.
It's very consistent with what I'm saying. That's the Sefirot Agnuzis is the Shir. Okay, that's after the siluk.
Not necessarily.
No, it's not exactly like necessarily.
Before the tzimtzum, it means that any.
The first line, the tzimtzum.
You're talking lines. You're talking Havana. Go back to the beginning. You cannot contradict the fact that the tzimtzum addition is b'derech siluk.
Right.
What tzimtzum addition is b'derech siluk? Because there's also kalim. You didn't even forget about the kalim. This is all about Eir. He's talking about the kalim. There's also a whole thing with kalim. So the tzimtzum addition is a derech siluk, is not a derech miyut. Anyway, I'm not going to go. There's not mathematics, not Shulchan Aruch. Okay. V'yesh leimer, and we can say Shareishem Hanishur Zel. Yesh leimer, we can say Shareishem Hanishur, that the impression that remained Zel b'chinas Ein Sof shesheda b'chochma. That this is the infinite light that hovers, that rests in chochma. Like it says in Tanya chapter 35 in the Haggadah, in the glossary there, in the whatever we call Haggadah, the note. That chochma, there it says that chochma is margish, feels shahu levade ve'ein zelase. Chochma senses bittul. Emes, that's why it's called truth, because there rests the infinite divine light, which is a reshim, a impression from the infinite light before the tzimtzum. Oh, this is interesting chiddush here. This is vital to the whole hemshech, because later he's going to speak in this hemshech that chochma becomes the interface, and chochma stima. So chochma d'atzilus has in it a measure of bittul. Why? Because in its root, the eir hagvul, the shershei of the eiris, even though there's a tzimtzum that concealed the bligvul, still has an impression, like he just said, from the bligvul. And that bligvul that rests inside the 10 hidden spheres creates a situation that later chochma will retain a memory of bligvul. That's what he says here. That's where he says it. Chapter 358. We learned that. Oh, did we? No, I didn't learn that. No, we learned about chochma. No, we didn't learn that. Okay. That's very, very powerful. You see the interface working here, all sides. There's the bligvul, there's the erhagvul, there's the sefirah pratis. And all this is not even kalim yet. Just remember that. And delve, probe, study what it says in Likutei Torah in Vayikach Kerech chapter 2, the chochma mislabish eir haseviv. That in chochma is manifest the eir haseviv. That's the eir habligvul. B'pchinas pnimi, in a form of pnimi. That's why chochma is this paradox. You get something, it's the beginning spark of an idea, it has to go through chochma, but it's only a spark, it's very elusive. So it has like a seviv dimension and a pnimi dimension. It's pnimi, but it's like beyond you. So he says that's seviv manifesting in pnimi. Uv'shehu inyan hamoshel shebemedrash memaris gdelis umaris ktanis unsham. And that's the moshel, example of medrash of the big mirrors and the small mirrors. There's the medrash there where he talks about. He brings this later about ichus. There's this moshel. No. The example is, I'm trying to remember the exact example. It's an example about how the same mirror reflects an image. A small mirror reflects the big image just as much as a big mirror reflects it. Like a drop of water reflects the sun just like the entire sea. But nevertheless, there is a difference between small and big. I have to look up the mashal. We studied it already, and I forgot what it was exactly, the mashal. None of you know it, huh? It's a mashal in Medrash, yeah. Yi'u and Sham, he says clearly to look into it twice. You have a tzivui and a hirah from the Rebbe to look twice into Vayikach Kerach. Yeah. He says Rishu'in. Yeah. But later also here he brings the Medrash. I think is brought by Riches Gedela. Which Maimer? You know what? Why not look both, and you'll find out. Where was it? No. One second. There's the whole medrash. The whole mashal is brought later. Okay. Mikol mokum yeshlema. Nevertheless, one can say that this is just an impression from the infinite divine light. Because nevertheless, it's only min kanaf. It's only from the same material of the beged of the kanaf means edge usually. It means corner. Yeah. So min kanaf is really min kanaf means it's from the corner of the beged. Fine. So it's from the same. It's from the same material of the garment, but not the garment itself. So what's the makom lakum yesh le'emer? It's not. It's only a reishim. That's what he's saying. Nevertheless, even though chochma has within it, like he says in Likutei Torah, has within it eir haseviv, it's only an impression. Nevertheless, being that impression from infinite energy, it carries riboy eir b'chinas bligvul. It carries an intense energy and a form of bligvul. Now in the parentheses he qualifies. This is not like the impression, which is the impression of the infinite divine light, the mavur that explained elsewhere. This is not concerning the containers. Elsewhere it explains, like we learning here, even earlier, that after the tzimtzum addition, tzimtzum concealed all the energy, so now you have a black hole. There's no kav, there's nothing. But if it's not completely empty, there's a reshima there. A reshima of the energy before that remains in the asius even after the tzimtzum. Like he spoke before, that there's even a maila because the loy nagabah tzimtzum. That the tzimtzum did not touch or affect that. The sham liyesh shezeh b'chinas keiach hagvul shebe'ensef. There, talking about this other Rishima. There, being that it's the keiach hagvul, not the keiach hasher she hagvul of is the power of the finite in Einsef. Al kein reisha me'er, he b'chinas helam be'esis. That's why the impression of the energy is concealed in the letters. V'gam ba b'chinas keiach gvuli. And it also comes in a finite power. Like it sells elsewhere. But here, talking about the root of the energies, the reishim of the bli gvul, the impression is revealed, and also a little gvul, has also an element of bli gvul in it.
It's in the middle of the page. It's not about this type of reishim, not that type of reishim.
Yeah. Well, the fize yesh levayir gam l'shita zu, and according to this, we could explain also to this shita. Which shita? He's talking about the shita that energy has particles, has some type of impression. You see, according to the shita, that the kav is infinite light, is rooted in infinite light, and the shesh and the 10 hidden spheres is the root of the containers. It's one thing. Even according to the opinion that the kav is rooted in the hidden spheres, and this is all Eir HaGvul, you could also explain, according to this approach, the shita, in other words, discussed in this discourse, which he keeps emphasizing, this discussion is that the Eir is shaped, is the kav has yesh beis chochma, has two opposites. Shul kav amida, it's a kav that measures. Actually, kav amida is used when you talk about, let's say, a measuring, what do you call it? A measuring instrument, a measuring spoon, or measuring. So a kav is like a ruler. A ruler. So the kav is a kav that, gvul. V'gam akasher u'miyachad v'esis kalus basfiras. And then it does an opposite thing. It connects. It binds and connects and unites and creates interconnectivity between the spheres. Think of a physical ruler or a measuring, what do we call it? A measuring spoon. That only has one function. It measures.
Measuring instrument.
Yeah, it measures and that's it. Here the measuring thing, the thing that defines the parameters, also connects all the things that it, which means it has a davar hifuch. It has two opposites within it. The parentheses. He's qualifying according to the other opinion. According to what it says in another place. That's the other shita. According to the fact that the kav is rooted in the infinite light, the only thing is it's measured and defined by the rishimu, not on its own. These two opposites are understood simply. Since the kav is fundamentally infinite, that's why it binds and unites. And its measuring is not from itself. That's because the Rishima had an impact on it. But however, according to what it explained here, the shita, that the kav is finite, meaning that there is some type of shape and form also in the energy. It's not like colorless water, liquid, in tinted glass, but the liquid itself, the energy itself has energy. So then, how does it have the ability to create unity? That even though in its root it has 10 spheres, not because of the Rishima, but because in itself, in its root it has 10, because it's the vision of the artist, just those 10. That's why it's a measuring rod, it's a measuring kav, line. In the way that the energies are revealed in the 10 spheres, as we shall explain with God's help. Nevertheless, why? Nevertheless, it still binds and unites the spheres. Through the reishim, the impression that it has from the bli gvul that he was talking here, that remains. The Eid al-Kulona, that's there. Ha'el al-Kulona, al-Kulam, that rises above them all. The Gama reishim b'chinas ein seif. Because the reishim has an element that is not defined.
So before the first tzimtzum.
There's no first and second tzimtzum. He never says tzimtzum addition, tzimtzum. No, tzimtzum aleph beis means two elements of one tzimtzum. Okay. Tzimtzum addition and tzimtzum hasheni is first and second in Hebrew.
Two elements before the first element.
Anyway, I told you they both are the same tzimtzum addition. If you go back to the beginning of this, you'll see it. Also, the impression is in a form of Ein Sof, without end. So though the Kav is Gilead Helam only compared to the root of its energies, but it's Be'en Arech compared to the infinite, nevertheless, it retains some impression from the Bligvul, which is what gives it the power to unite the spheres, not just to measure them and define them. U'makom mokim has a reishim levad. Nevertheless, it's only an impression. So compared to the Bligvul, it's Shalei Berach, but it has this impression. But compared to its root, it's only revealing the concealed. And that's why the primary function of the Kav is defining, meaning that it's transcendent by nature, but it has within it the impression, it has within it the potential, the Chesed and Gvura, like he said earlier, that will ultimately manifest in containers. Okay, we'll stop here. And in chapter 29, he's going to go back to the whole connection with the containers in this. So we learned here chapter. Should I do the Kitzur? And then we'll learn that. Okay, why not? Let's do the Kitzur on page Mem Zayin. I'll do it again later. And the tzimtzum is that the infinite light was concealed, and left the Ashara, the envisioned, yeah. That's like a nekuda, only a point compared to the infinite light. And then emanated chochma, which is the first nekuda, the first point came out revealed. And it has within it two tzimtzumim. Siluk era Ein Sof, that the era Ein Sof, the Bligvul, the infinite light, was completely removed. Miyut, and the diminishing of the light. And even in the diminished, even in the there remains a reshim, a impression from the infinite light. We could say this is the infinite light within chochma. And this is the kav, is reveals the concealed compared to the root of the energies. But yeshmayin but it's yeshmayin, like a new thing compared to the infinite light that was removed. And left only a impression in the kav. And according to this, it's also understood. It makes sense. Yitzdak will also be reconciled. Will also make Yitzdak justified. According to this opinion, that the kav has the power to bind and combine, unite, because of the impression of the infinite light within it. And then we'll go back and learn the end of the Maimer. Now, the bottom line, I will say this before, is that in the beginning of this whole discussion, he's talking about the kav. It's all about the kav. The only reason he went to discuss what's going on before the tzimtzum is to understand the kav after the tzimtzum. So the kav, we discussed, on one hand, you need a complete concealment in order for the kav to emerge. He made that very clear. Because the kav is finite, has finite energies. So practically he was saying was, compared to the containers of Atzilus, they're infinitely distant from the source. Explained that at length. The energies, he said, are not infinitely different. But then he was said, in the energy itself, there's two elements. Compared to their root, the kav's root, in the 10 hidden spheres, that's Gilead Helam. Compared to its root, in the energy before the 10 hidden spheres, that it's derech siluk, tzimtzum. So this one tzimtzum that concealed everything before it had many impacts. He didn't speak about the third impact. One impact it has is it conceals the infinite light, even from the root of the 10 hidden, even from the root of the kav in the 10 hidden spheres. Thus, the kav has an infinite connection, an infinitely distant connection. It diminished the light in the hidden spheres. So you could have the revelation of one sphere at a time. That, compared to that, the kav is a revelation of Gilead Helam, and not infinitely distant. And then there's, of course, the siluk, that caused that the container should be able to emerge. As you said earlier, that the primary role of the tzimtzum arishin was for the containers. But now we've also learned that also the energy needs a fundamental concealment because of the era bligvul. Now, of course, according to the opinion that the kav is bligvul, the opinion not here, the question is there a siluk also in the era bligvul for the kav? Because you could say the kav doesn't need it. The kav can be connected to the infinite light because it's not finite. It's not rooted in the finite in she'eres. It's rooted in the bligvul. It doesn't discuss that here. That's another discussion. But here, according to this opinion, he's explaining how the kav has. In other words, I'm asking the question the other way around. Here he explained how the kav can also combine because the kav has a reshim, as a impression of the bligvul. But what about according to the opinion that the kav is bligvul? How is it really impacted by the reshima? It's infinite, and the reshima does impact it. And do you need a tzimtzum? But there are siluk also in the bligvul compared to the kav, because the kav then is rooted in the Ein Sof Lifnei HaTzimtzum, in the bligvul. And according to that, you have to say, according to the Pardes, that the hidden spheres is really the root of the containers. But there you could argue that you need a tzimtzum. For sure you need a siluk, because the air is bligvul, you definitely need a siluk. Because there's no way that this kav could emerge as a kav if it didn't go through a profound tzimtzum. Okay, that's discussed elsewhere. I'm just speculating some of the ideas here. So this, if we finish chapter 28, and pages, let's see here, 44 and 45.